One thing that can be a very beneficial defense for SQL injection is using an IDS or a WAF. Let me explain what I mean by that. So first of all, an intrusion detection system or a web application firewall are independent implementations from the app itself. So in fact, they sit in front of the app. Your request must go through the IDS or the WAF in order to get to the web app, and the defense is then implemented at those levels. Now these do tend to be signature based, so they understand what a SQL injection attack might look like, and they'll be rejecting any request that might match that pattern. Of course, you do have to be a little bit careful here as well, because you don't want to reject any legitimate requests. But certainly, as they start to learn what's malicious, an IDS or a WAF can be a really good independent layer of defense. The other great thing about these tools is that they can be maintained independently. And what I mean by that is that they can evolve in response to the threat landscape. So SQL injection is just one example of the sort of things these tools can defend against. They can look at other emerging risks, such as newly discovered threats, and implement signatures to defend against those attacks. And all of this is without even touching the app. So it doesn't mean developers are rebuilding things and testing things and deploying things. It's the device in front of the web app which is updated and maintained. Let me give you 3 different examples of the sorts of appliances I'm talking about. A really simple example around intrusion detection would be URL Scan from Microsoft. It's free, it runs in the app so it's easy to deploy, and it looks for known bad patterns around things like SQL injection. Now URL Scan can simply reject the request and provide this independent layer of defense. But it's a very, very simple little tool. You wouldn't really call it a full-blown intrusion detection system, but it does provide an independent layer of defense from the app itself. A proper web application firewall is something like Barracuda. Now Barracuda can actually be a physical network appliance that sits in front of the web server. All of the requests go through Barracuda and it looks for targeted attacks which it knows to be bad. As you can see here on the website, it can also do things like DDoS protection and defense against other advanced attacks. Now Barracuda can be a physical appliance, can also be a logical appliance. So as we can see a little bit further down the page, it can be applied to things like Microsoft's Azure or Amazon's AWS. It can sit in those cloud environments in front of that web app and provide all the sorts of benefits I've already mentioned, plus a whole heap more. Another evolution of the web application firewall is something like Cloudflare. So Cloudflare is available as an entirely managed cloud service. It can be the first point of contact for website requests, which are then routed through to your site. And as we can see on their website here, Cloudflare security can include defense against everything from SQL injection to distributed denial of services and a whole bunch of other attacks. Now the neat thing about Cloudflare being a managed service is that it can constantly evolve to protect against emerging threats. And somebody else manages this for you. It's still configurable to a degree, but you're now not the one having to manage your own WAF. Now Cloudflare actually does a bunch of other neat stuff as well. So things like providing a content distribution network and optimizing web content to make sites perform faster. And they have the luxury of being able to do this because they sit in front of your site. So this is a really, really neat example of what can be done with a WAF. What I will add though, and this applies to everything that we've just looked at in this clip, is that none of these things are a reason not to get the security in the app right. All of the good defenses that I've spoken about in this module are still essential. This doesn't negate any of them. And of course, all of this comes back to this whole principle of defense in depth again. So these sort of appliances or services are fantastic, but they sit there on top of everything else as an additional line of defense.